Hey everyone, welcome to Koopa Man's Summer of Gaming, live from Zack Island, where the sun is hot and the sunbathing ladies are even hotter. To coincide with Jeff Keighley's Summer Games Fest and to celebrate the total annihilation of E3, all this month we're going to talk about topics concerning video games and gaming. So let's have a look at what's first on our docket. Alright, fine, we'll talk about this one. This is supposed to be fun. Cue the music. Remember when video game franchises by Sony were actually good and not vehicles for leftist anti-theist agendas? That's right, we are going to talk about the current state of God of War. Now then, like with Assassin's Creed, I used to really be into the God of War series. I had the complete collection on PS3 and still have it on my shelf to this day. And what's not to love? The Greek mythology, the hack-and-slash character action gameplay, the puzzles that will give Zelda a run for its money. Sure, it wasn't as deep lore-wise as Assassin's Creed, but it was still very much up there for me. Yeah, it played Greek mythology a bit fast and loose, but relative to other adaptations of classical myths such as Disney's Hercules, Kid Icarus, Percy Jackson, and so on, this version was a fair bit closer to home than anything else that was produced at the time. The first game even had the exact same tone and tenor of a Greek hero's story. They rarely, if ever, have happy endings. Heck, even the PSP games were a blast to play through, though Chains of Olympus does admittedly lose focus pretty quick in its plot. It's still fun though. You can't even say that Kratos is a total remorseless monster by the end of the final game, because for all the bad he's done, the gods were that much worse. And for every selfish action he took to get to that point, he finally makes one great selfless sacrifice to atone for all the bad he's done and give humanity a fighting chance. Oh, spoiler warning, if anyone actually cares about spoilers for like a 10-year-old game. Also graphic content, this game was rated M for a very good reason.
What was it, Kratos?
All I remember is what I have lost.
That is why you should give me the power. I understand its true meaning and where it belongs. I trust you to do the right thing, Kratos.
You shouldn't.
You owe me this, Kratos.
I owe you nothing.
I made you a god. I sheltered you from the wrath of Olympus. I delivered you revenge on Zeus.
It is over, Athena.
You would dare strike me down? Again?
My vengeance ends now.
Kratos, no! That was meant for me! They will not know what to do with it! You disappoint me, Spartan.
Yeah, I'd like to imagine the blue flames being the fires of hope being influenced by the Jeff John Green Lantern mythos, where the Blue Lanterns are the guardians of hope. But anyway, that was the end of Kratos. Like most Greek heroes, he was a tragic figure, but in the end left the world a better place than it was when he came in, by releasing the hope of the gods the way Prometheus stole their fire. There really was nowhere left to go. Sure, God of War Ghost of Sparta would explore Kratos' past and his long-lost brother, and then would come God of War Ascension, which we don't like to talk about on this channel. But there was no way Kratos could have survived running himself through with a massive glaive of divine energy. God or no God. So if the series was to continue, a reboot was essentially required. Maybe a retelling of the story with Kratos again, but in a different way like most reboots do. But I remember at the time, the most popular thing the fans theorized and wished for was a whole new fresh story with a new protagonist and a new set of gods. The most popular choice being the Aesir and Vanir of Norse and Germanic myth. Perhaps a story about a great berserker who rises to Valhalla only to be trained for the Great War, the Twilight of the Gods, Ragnarok. Perhaps it could also tell the story of a pre-existing god a bit more faithfully, as the Norse pantheon is chock full of war gods. A game about Tyr, or Thor, or even Odin himself. The sky was the limit. That is, of course, were it not for the fact that God of War Ascension was a total flop both as a game and in sales. It made the chances of the series ever continuing or rebooting very unlikely. And it would remain dormant, probably for the best, for a total of 5 years. No news, no rumors, no nothing. Until E3 2016. Towards the middle or the end of the Sony conference, the orchestra they hired, don't ask, started up a new song from a totally unknown game, with a choir chanting in deep Germanic Norse. Could this be it? The reboot we all waited for? They finally listened? They're doing Viking God of War? The trailer starts and we are greeted by a little Viking boy. Okay, maybe we're gonna see the new protagonist grow up through it again. I can sort of dig it. But then...
Boy! Your mother's knife. It belongs to you now.
What for?
A test. She taught you to hunt, yes?
Yes, sir.
Then show me what you know. I am hungry.
What? What the fuck? Wait, what? How? Why is Kratos still alive? The short answer is so Sony can keep using him as a cash cow. The long answer? It didn't get explained until a spin-off comic in 2021 where Kratos faced off against the gods of Egypt. Don't you love when video games make you do homework like in Halo 5? Anyway, in that, it was revealed that the Blades of Chaos have a side effect on Kratos that while he's not quite a god, he is perfectly immortal. All while he's being confronted by the spirit of Athena who wants him to return to Greece to face his destiny. This is of course ignoring the fact that he traded the Blades of Chaos for the Blades of Athena and then finally the Blades of the Exile, but that's a whole different story. After the events of the comic that was released 5 years after we would require such an explanation and wasted a premise that the fans would have loved, Kratos exiles himself to the forests of Scandinavia, intent to live out the rest of his eternity in solitude. He, however, meets a woman by the name of Faye, short for Laufey. Because it is required to happen for the plot of the reboot to make sense, they fall in love and have a son named Atreus, who Kratos doesn't take out with him on hunts because he was born rather frail and he doesn't want to accidentally hurt the boy. And then, shortly before the start of the game, Laufey dies. Somehow. Was she killed? Did she get sick? Did Kratos get manipulated into killing her by Ares or Athena or maybe one of the Norse gods? We don't know, it never gets explained. So to summarize, Kratos survived because the plot needed him to survive, fundamentally changed his personality because the plot required him to be a different person, and is in a different setting because the plot requires him to be in a different location with a different mythology. If all this sounds familiar, it should. That's exactly what Rian Johnson did to Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi.
I said to Ryan, I said, Jedis don't give up. I mean, even if he had a problem, he would maybe take a year to try and regroup. But if he made a mistake, he would try and right that wrong. So right there, we had a fundamental difference. But it's not my story anymore. It's somebody else's story. And Ryan needed me to be a certain way to make the ending effective. That's the crux of my problem. Luke would never say that. I'm sorry. Well, in this version, see, I'm talking about the George Lucas Star Wars. This is the next generation of Star Wars, so I almost had to think of Luke as another character. Maybe he's Jake Skywalker. He's not my Luke Skywalker, but I had to do what Ryan wanted me to do because it serves the story well. But listen, I still haven't accepted it completely, but it's only a movie. I hope people like it. I hope they don't get upset, and I came to really believe that Ryan was the exact man that they needed for this job.
This brings up another question. If the character doesn't really look like Kratos aside from the tattoos, doesn't really act like Kratos, has effectively a brand new backstory different than Kratos, then how is he Kratos? The simple answer?
We've got to have money.
It's kind of obvious that Santa Monica started on a full-on reboot featuring a Norse berserker who sets out to fight and or become a god alongside his son to avenge his wife, but somewhere along the way they lost confidence in being able to use a new character, so they swapped in Kratos into his place instead. The plot was rewritten thusly, and certain elements were added in for continuity and fan service to the original games, while remaining very shallow in their implementation. Tinfoil hat? Maybe. But looking at the game critically, this theory does hold up a fair bit. Without getting too into the weeds on spoilers for either God of War 2016 or Ragnarok, gonna be honest, I have no interest in playing either, but I have seen the cutscenes and gameplay walkthroughs, so let's break it down. So, the story of Kratos begins with Kratos as a Spartan captain. In a battle with insurmountable numbers of barbarians and the odds of survival being slim to none, Kratos pledges his loyalty to the war god Ares, who in mythology is about as trustworthy as the Lightbringer. No, not him, Lucifer. As part of the deal, Kratos is given the Blades of Chaos, which are seared into his flesh from then on, and is made to do the war god's bidding. However, it would come at a price. While Kratos, even before this day, was a fair bit haughty, Ares would groom him into being the worst he could possibly be, in the name of molding him into the perfect weapon. And in order to achieve this end, Ares knew Kratos had to sever all ties. So Ares one day would manipulate Kratos via sorcery into killing his own wife and daughter.
They've built this temple to offer prayers to Athena! This entire village stands as an affront to Lord Ares! Burn this village! Burn it to the ground!
Emboldened by the god of war, Kratos' army was ruthless, feared throughout the world for their brutality. All that mattered was conquest in the name of Kratos, their great leader, who had become near invincible. He feared nothing. But there was something about this temple, something forbidden. All his instincts told him he should never cross its threshold. Never step inside.
Beware, Kratos. The dangers in the temple are greater than you know.
But the village oracle's warning fell on deaf ears. His ambition would not be denied. All who opposed him would die. In that instant, the glory he had reveled in turned to horror. The image of his two final victims would stay with him for all his days. With that act, Kratos knew he could no longer serve his master. He had but one calling now, the death of Ares. He would murder the god of war.
Now, you may be wondering why he'd be so insistent on destroying worshippers of Athena. Well, funny story. In mythology, Athena and Ares had always been rival gods, and as such, their cults did not like each other very much. Furthermore, the city-state of Athens, whose patron was Athena, had been in history forcing its will upon the other Greek city-states, especially Sparta. As such, they would often go to war, most famously during the Peloponnesian War, where Sparta finally suppressed Athens' grip on the rest of the hegemony. Anyway, seeing what the bargain had cost him, Kratos set out to avenge his family, becoming a servant of the Olympians to do so. Because they could not act against each other unless provoked, Kratos would wait many years while serving the gods before he'd get his chance, when Ares would launch a divine campaign against the city of Athens. After being ambushed by a Hydra, feeding the ship's captain to the beast, and then banging said captain's concubines, Kratos discovers that there's a small problem. Ares was currently 50 feet tall and also still a god. After guidance from Athena and her oracle, as well as encountering a gravedigger, but I'll get to him in a second, he is directed to find Pandora's box in a temple bound to the king of the Titans, Cronus. The gods of Olympus grant Kratos each a bit of their power as he makes his way to and through the temple. However, when he reaches the box, it's stolen by Ares, and Kratos is killed for his trouble. But not even Hades itself can contain Kratos. That and the god Hades is one of the gods actually aiding him. Kratos crawls out of the underworld and is conveniently at the temple where he needs to be, thanks to the aid of a mysterious gray-cloaked one-eyed gravedigger. Gray cloak? One eye? Sound familiar? Well, get your mind out of there, it's not him. Sad to say, though that would have been a way to make the transition make more sense. I'll get into that later. Kratos steals back the box and uses the power within to transform into a being who can equally match Ares and defeats and slays the god of war. Mission accomplished. Except Kratos finds that he still feels guilt for his actions, even though they were actions he took under manipulation and mind control by Ares. His quest for revenge was meaningless. Hey, what do you know? A Sony game that did Revenge Sucks way better than The Last of Us Part 2. Kratos is about to take his own life, but instead Athena allows him to ascend to Olympus and become the new god of war. Though I'm sure if he saw what his future held, I'm certain he would have absolutely jumped. Now, when thinking back to this game and its sequels, fans of the new God of War games like to denigrate and minimize Kratos' character and arc in these games, calling him nothing more than an angry gorilla. This is largely because leftist simps are unable to prop up their own franchises and creations without resorting to being reductive about other franchises and creations they are working to undermine. Oh, I'm sorry, was that too direct for you? Let me rephrase it then. New God of War fans are fucking tourists and brand-worshipping ponies who either praise the new game for being part of the narrative, or only because it's shout out by the brand, and because the brand is being reductive about its own past, they should be too. The story of Kratos wasn't of some dumb muscle-bound ape, but a broken man on a quest for revenge against those who wronged him, be that Ares, or in the sequels, Thanatos, Zeus, and the Titans. And he goes to various extremes, not thinking about how selfish or short-sighted he is being. But in the end, every time, he finds that revenge is unfulfilling and ultimately decides to make a sacrifice in order to make things right. Be it in serving as the new god of war to maintain balance in the world, or sacrificing his own life to restore hope to the world. He was this way because he was not only a flawed man, being raised up from a young age for his tactical brilliance, allowing him to develop an ego, but a damaged man whose sins are literally burnt into his skin and whose actions haunt him every time he so much as closes his eyes. He also didn't go after the gods for no reason. In God of War 1, he's literally targeting the man who ruined his life by using him and grooming him as a weapon. In its prequel, Channel of Olympus, he kills Persephone, who not only betrayed and manipulated him, but was also trying to destroy the entire world. In Ghost of Sparta, he kills Thanatos for killing his long-lost brother. And finally, in God of War 2 and 3, he kills Zeus, the Olympians, and the Titans, all for using and betraying him, and Zeus for trying to kill him. Does all this make Kratos' extreme actions okay? No, but that's not the fucking point. Kratos is the Frankenstein's monster the gods have created, and we take pleasure in seeing the monster take its revenge on its creators. Though Kratos has at least enough humanity left to, once again, make a sacrifice for the greater good. All of this is evident when you remember the Greek tragic hero that Kratos is based on. No, not the obscure god also named Kratos, with a C, but Heracles, the demigod son of Zeus. Alright, didn't I mention? Who is tricked by the gods into killing his family and has to go on a series of quests to earn his redemption, but is betrayed and dies at the very end. A man who took so many careless and horrible actions that no one would light his funeral pyre at the end. To have Kratos survive after the end of 3 is bad enough in and of itself, but to bring down the Norse gods in the process with such blatant revisionism and spite is something else entirely. You may remember I mentioned the design of the Gravedigger resembling the mortal disguise of Odin. If you think about it, if Kratos were to survive and become an Aesir, it would have been by Odin's own intervention, admiring his power rather than fearing it. If anything, he would see Kratos as a great ally and asset, not as a threat or an enemy. Never forget, it is the same Odin who gave the trickster god Loki every single chance and then some. I could go on about how the characterization, the designs, and the outright narrative and story of the new games itself undermine Norse mythology, but that'd take a whole separate video that, quite frankly, if it isn't self-evident already, I don't want to make it because it'd be a waste of my breath. Don't cast your pearls before ponies. All of this brings us to one topic in particular, David Jaffe's original ending. You see, each game in the trilogy had hints of what the original plan was. In the first game, in Pandora's Temple, there was an image designed on the floor of a lone Spartan warrior partaking in a great battle with Zeus, predicting the events of the next 2 games. Further elaborating on this is the fact that the man who designed the temple believed that the Titans would rise again and do war with the gods, something that was the goal of Game 2 and is seen in Game 3. In God of War 2, when you reach the Temple of the Fates, home to the Sisters of Fate who are able to see the future, there are 3 images of note. First is of a great battle between the gods and Titans, which can either be the first Titan Amaki or the events of the game's finale, as this was Kratos' skull this time around. The second image shows a lone survivor after the battle has ended, the figure resembling Kratos from behind, which mirrors what happens in the end of the third game. And the final image is where it gets interesting. Blue stars light the sky as 3 men in the desert follow them. This was the original ending plan for the game. Now what it means is up to interpretation, mainly because Jaffe has been a little bit inconsistent on its meaning and has since deviated from this ending regardless. From interviews and accounts, it is believed that the 3 figures are in fact the 3 magi from biblical nativity, but also representative of Kratos and 2 others, possibly other war gods. It is also known that there were plans to do God of War set in Norse and Egyptian mythologies. It is entirely possible that these 2 figures were probably representative of other 2 protagonists of the franchise. Tyr and Montu, perhaps? Just a note, Montu at Busch Gardens is the best B&M invert, and it has nothing to do with this video, but when else am I gonna have a chance to say it on the record? If the theory that Kratos wasn't intended to survive into the Norse God of War originally before perhaps the Sony executive at the San Francisco office changed the plans because Bay Area parasites don't have more than a single-digit IQ, then it would fit into the grand plan for the franchise overall, to tell the stories of the deaths of the old gods as they cleared the way for the King of Kings, and each one would release their contribution into the future of the world. It should also be noted that God of War 3 released on March 16th, which coincides with the book of John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. Could it all be a coincidence? Maybe. But it certainly would have provided a much more wholly fulfilling experience in game than what we received instead. I doubt anyone who worked on the games now would admit that it was ever in the cards, because being part of a Californian company requires you to wear a fedora so tightly on your head it blocks off all oxygen to your brain. And that's really it in the end. Sony had their golden goose, and, as always, they killed it with their own hands because it wasn't good enough for them. When will these fucking leftists learn? Anyway, it has been the Koopa Man. Game on.